Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome to All-Core Devs call 228. I'll put the link to the agenda in the chat. Basically for today, two main topics. One is the DevNets, Amsterdam DevNets, specifically DevNet 2 scope, and then some clarifications to related EIPs. And then afterwards, hopefully, we will be able to finish the Amsterdam PFI decisions today. To get started, for DevNet 2, specifically, so there was a preliminary decision made on DevNet 2 scope on ACDE this Monday, but then my understanding is there was some conversation afterwards about whether maybe that scope was too broad, whether it would make sense to revisit that. So do we have anyone with context on this decision and the current status of the thinking there on the call that could give a summary?
Yeah, I could give a quick summary. In general, it seems that we need to change something in the CL for this change, and that's why there was some kind of discussion if we should even include it, because having changes in the EL and the CL, so the goal was just to have changes in the EL, might be a little bit too much. So there was some discussion about that. It would be great to hear quickly from clients how they feel about it. But from my perspective, it seems it would be nice to include it. It's only, I think, a small change set. And I think it shouldn't be such a big blocker. But from Loadster right now, we don't have anyone, I think, that can speak about that. I think we will, from the Loadster side, we can make a discussion on Monday when someone will be back from holiday. That's pretty much the context.
Sounds good. And just to clarify, this is about the slot num opcode specifically, is this right?
Yeah, EIP 7843.
Sounds good. Yeah, I do think, I mean, in principle, I'm not sure how the EL clients feel about this in general. It seems to me like it would be nice if we could kind of agree on the scope of DevNet 2 kind of today, not just next week. Of course, unless do we have client teams with an opinion on like, do we want to make this decision today, and then whether they would want to remove the slot num opcode from DevNet 2.
Let me do it. You're unmuted.
Was there someone from the group in the camera that wants to say something, or was this accidental?
No, sorry, we're just technologically illiterate. Mostly me.
Okay, no worries.
I mean, otherwise we can also decide on Monday if there is no one wants to talk now about it.
Yeah, I mean, in principle, like I was gonna try to time box this anyway. If there's no urgency on this decision, which I thought there might be, but now that no one's speaking up, it seems like maybe there's no urgency, then I would propose we just make kind of like the final DevNet 2 scoping decisions on ACDE next Monday. But of course, it's good to highlight this today so people are aware that's when that will happen. Is that okay with everyone? I'll just wait for any protest. Okay, but then we do then let's just not today touch the scoping discussion itself, but we do have a few EIP clarification requests, or otherwise kind of just topics around the EIPs that came up, 4 in total. I'll just go through them one by one. So the first one was on the EIP 7778, log gas accounting without refunds. There is a request for clarifications on cumulative gas used for paying, gas used for block limit. I think the comment was by Andrew on the issue. Is Andrew, are you on the call? Or Tony, do you have context on this?
Yeah, I'm on the call. Basically, as I wrote on Discord, at least, sorry, is it 7778 or 8022?
7778.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, at least in Aragon, the assumption that the cumulative gas used in receipts actually corresponds to block gas limit counting is in so many places that it will be very difficult to change it. So I suggest to keep that assumption. Otherwise, yeah, it will be a massive change and very bug prone. So that's a change that I propose to the spec, and there is also a clarification needed because it underspecifies the overplay between 77, 78 and 76, 23. But I think, yeah, maybe Tony can comment on that.
Yeah,
Tony?
this is a good point. I actually had a PR today, so this is something we clarified today in the execution specs. And just to ask you, Andrew, you were saying you want the block gas accounting should include the transaction gas used before the refunds, after the refund, sorry. So you want the receipts to include the gas used after the refunds. Am I correct here?
No. So it should be like, okay, so in 77, 78, you have this gas used for block accounting, right? Number two, which does not contain refunds, right? So I want cumulative gas used in receipts to be consistent with block gas accounting, not user gas costs.
Okay, yeah, this is exactly what we clarified in the last PR, so it should be fine now.
Cool.
Please take a look and let me know. Because previously it said the receipts should include the gas used after the refunds, but the receipts only include the cumulative gas used. So the question is, what do we want to add to the cumulative gas used? Should we add the gas used pre-refund or after refund? And
You
I
need
think
to
it makes
use
sense.
it to add it.
Yeah. So it makes sense to add the gas used pre-refund in order such that we can use the cumulative gas used to enforce the block gas limit.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether we need to add the gas used before refund. Maybe it's useful, but I guess if there is no big ask for it, we can just skip it. But I don't know.
Okay, is
Okay,
this
yeah.
something that then beyond this we can take offline, or would we have to make a decision here further today?
No, I think we can take it async. Let's have a chat under the PR I posted. I think that's the best place where we can discuss that further.
Sounds good. Then I'll move to the next EIP. That is EIP 8024. So the swap and dupe and exchange opcodes. There was also a comment by Andrew about clarification, basically what happens if the code ends right before an immediate operand. And then there was also separately from Dragan a proposal to potentially simplify the EIP. Yeah, Andrew, do you want to give a comment on your clarification on your question first?
Yes. So this EIP was underspecified. I looked at the implementation in Geth, and there it treated that case when the immediate operand was on the code's end as an error, and it's not what push one does. So my suggestion is to do it consistently with push one. I treat the value of the operand as 0. I mean, I don't care much. I just have a slight preference for consistency, but in any case, it should be specified in the EIP. I think there is a PR to the EIP to treat the operand value as 0 in such case.
Okay. Do we have anyone on the call I see one raised hand. Is this about this topic or the broader EIP question?
Yeah,
Okay,
about
then go
this
ahead.
EIP. So just I want to give some context. So first on the zero padding, yeah, this is the PR. I'm already changing it to be like push, which makes sense. And on Dragon's question, the EIP currently. So in order to work with jump dist analysis, the EIP is currently designed in a way that the immediate has to avoid using the jump dist opcode as a part of its immediate, or the push opcodes as a part of its immediate. And because this leaves a gap in the range available for the immediate, there needs to be an encoding and decoding step, which is relatively simple, but also relatively complex. And so Dragon's suggestion is to instead use another approach, which adds like is encoded in a way that you go like, you put the swap n opcode and then you follow it by the push one opcode, and only then you put the immediate. But the push is not really an instruction. There is just part of the broader instruction encoding. All of this is explained in the Ethereum Magicians post that I shared on the chat. There are the two options there. And I don't think anybody has very strong opinions about what to choose. So we just have to make a choice, and so it would be good to know what others feel here is the best choice. I will just say I think the trade-off is slightly or marginally more compute versus being less efficient in terms of bytecode size. Obviously, because one is a 2-byte encoding versus a 3-byte encoding. But to be frank, this is also an instruction that is not going to be extremely frequent. So it's you can also argue that the bytecode size impact is not going to be so much.
Yeah, Dragon?
The only stance that we have strong stance is this EIP needs to be included. So first or second version, it does matter a lot. In my opinion, second version having opcode, push to, and bytes is a lot more simple and something we could like to. But yeah, this was not even my idea. This like idea from like 2 years ago, and just bringing it back.
I see. And I would assume that the timing on this decision, like that it's relatively urgent to decide this, given that this is potentially, or like for now, scheduled for DevNet 2. And I guess it would not be ideal if we implement it one way and then have to implement it a different way for DevNet 3 and forward.
I would like to hear others just commenting on that now or as async. It should be like simplest decision, but we need like input from other clients, not just thread.
That's good. Do we have any clients right now on the call that have a take on this? Yes, Daniel?
Yeah, so I implemented it on the basis side, how it is specified in the EIP right now. And I mean, the logic is okay. So I mean, this decoding logic is a bit unusual, but I don't think it's that complex. But if we have to change it, I don't think there's any issue from our side. So as long as the EIP goes in, we are fine. So we don't have any strong opinions, I would say.
Makes sense. Anyone else? Otherwise, maybe question for Dragan and Francesco. Where would the best place be for people to like come and comment to make that decision, say in the next days, asynchronously? Is this the Discord? Is this the ETH Magicians? Like where would be the best place? Oh, yeah, Ben, maybe before.
So one of them changes jump dist analysis and the other doesn't. Is that correct?
No, none of them do.
Depends how you do jump dist analysis. Depends if you're basically asking if you're searching job destination or you're searching the immediate. I think get and that's a little bit different.
Yeah. So then I guess back to the question of where the best forum is for the decision.
Wherever people want to leave their opinion, I'm monitoring Discord, but also the Ethereum Magicians forum for the EIP works.
Good. And would it be reasonable to say that a decision, at least for like DevNet 2, would be made by Monday ACDT, because I guess that would be nice for people implementing this?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And maybe if no decision is made, we just go with the current one.
Yeah, sounds good. So then I guess ask for all clients do have a look, and if you have an opinion, or I guess even if you're fine with either, then just leave that as a comment somewhere where the comment can easily be found. Okay, thank you. Then I'll move on again. We have quite a bit to get through. The next topic was the last EIP clarification was EIP 7708. So this is ETH transfers emitting a log. My understanding is that there is a pending PR and some open questions. I'm not sure if the questions are answered in the PR or like they're specifically not yet answered in the PR, but there was a comment by Spencer on the agenda. Are you on the call, or does anyone else have context on that PR?
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to give that PR some more love. I think it feels like everyone's in agreement, but I think some more eyes just to determine if we're happy with the log address and the first topic value, and then also if we want to include fee payment logs on top of ETH transfer logs. More of a, can we get this merged into the spec sooner rather than later, and then clarification.
Sounds good.
Separately, I guess I'd also like to ask if we're going to finalize the scope for DevNet 2 next Monday. We're DevNet 2 scheduled on Wednesday. Should we push DevNet 2 forwards?
That's a reasonable question. Do we have? I'm not sure exactly who is in charge of DevNet coordination. Like, do we have?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, just
I think
a
Spencer was
general,
yeah.
So a general question: if we should push DevNet 2 forward, if we're going to finalize the scope next Monday, maybe the 28th instead of the 21st, it gives us an extra week.
Yeah, I think we can see how far we are on Monday and then decide on a date.
I think we don't even have the execution tests yet, no? I mean, before those aren't finished, we can't really start the DevNet because we cannot properly test everything.
Yeah, and I guess before we have the tests out, we kind of need to finalize the specs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what would be good is just to get everything ready for DevNet 2 as far as we can. I think I will leave DevNet 1 running a little bit longer so that we can still target that because the testing setup there is already ready. And we can do the benchmarking there, would be my suggestion. And then develop all the new EIPs on top of DevNet 2 and try to get everything ready there. And we should finalize everything on Monday, what exactly will go into DevNet 2.
Sounds good. So is that a good place to leave it at for now? And then come back on ACDT on Monday?
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome. Sounds good. Then, it's also same thing on like the EIP that's Spencer, the PR that Spencer mentioned, 7708, the ETH transfers one. Yeah, clients that might have an opinion, haven't looked yet, do have a look. And then presumably on by Monday, this would be finalized. Okay, then any last comments? Anyone that still wanted to bring anything up regarding the DevNets? Otherwise, we would move on to the Amsterdam PFI decisions, the outstanding ones. Okay, then let's move on. We have only a few EIPs left. I listed them all. Well, with Nix's help, Nix listed them all in the agenda for the call, but we also still have this document where they're categorized in different categories. I'm not sure, there was some issue with the website earlier today. Is it currently working? Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much, Josh. Okay, so we can go through them. Specifically, one EIP that we've been postponing for a while now, that is ready now for a decision is EIP 8037. So you can see it there under the state growth section. So specifically, that's basically the question of how, like, the choice of approach for the repricings of state growth specifically. And I think Marius had a brief presentation prepared for this. Marius, are you on the call? Actually, then we would have to switch screen sharing, actually.
Yes.
And yeah,
Can you guys hear me all right?
a bit quiet, but we can hear you.
Okay, I try to scream. Yes, 8037.
You're very quiet. If you can move any closer to the mic or something.
I'm as close to the mic as I can be. I'll just try to scream. Basically, 8037, the state creation gas cost increase. It has multiple different goals. It makes state growth dependent on the gas limit, so that whenever we increase the gas limit, we also increase the cost for creating new state. And this is very important because if we like 10x the gas limit, we also want to 10x how we don't want to 10x the amount of state that can be created in this gas limit. We want the state increase to be kind of constant, and we want a target of roughly 100 gigabytes per year, and this can be changed. But for this to happen, we need to measure state growth on a different axis than normal computation. And another thing that this EIP wants to do is wants to harmonize state creation across all operations. As you can see here, it is very different. Like creating 1 byte of state is very different across the different operations that we have. So the block gas limit. What we want to do is make the state growth dependent on the block gas limit. And in the last line, you see a formula for this. And basically, small changes in the gas limit are smoothed out. Otherwise, every time we would increase the gas limit, this would require repricings. What this means, though, is that the intrinsic gas is now dependent on the block gas limit. This means the transaction pools will need to change slightly. So every time this cost per byte changes, we would have to recheck the intrinsic gas to see if the transaction is still includable. But there might be a different, like we might change this formula a bit to smooth out the gas limit changes even more. So you would only need to recheck if the gas limit changes pretty drastically. And in addition to this, we will also need to introduce multidimensional metering, but this is not multidimensional gas. This is very different, but we would need to measure the state growth on a different axis than compute. And so we can adjust them independently. If we didn't do this, if we wanted to curb the state growth, that would have the result that big contracts would be impossible to be created in the 60 megagas transaction limit. So let's go through the concrete implementation. The gas in this new world is the minimum of the gas limit and 60 million gas. The gas limit can be much bigger than 60 million gas. Everything that is bigger than the 60 million gas is added to the state gas budget. And now if you create state, you first check the state gas budget and only the normal gas later. And all of the normal operations will charge to gas as usual. And that means that at maximum, a transaction will execute 16 megagas of burst resources, but as much as it pays for state growth. And this also means OP gas will just work normally. Why is this important? The burst resources need to still be unaffected, so we can have the 16 megagas gas limit, but not for the execution. Result of this is all state operations will be split into gas costs and state gas costs. So for example, the S-store operation now charges 2100, the called S-load cost to gas, and this cost, which is dependent on the gas limit, to storage gas. So why do we need this? We need this, otherwise we cannot increase the gas limit, because every time we would increase the gas limit, we would need to reprice all of the storage operations. Measuring the state growth separately allows us to adjust the limits, and we allow to limit execution to 16 million and unlocking higher state growth while making state growth itself more expensive. And the changes are pretty limited to the EVM. I've implemented this yesterday and today in roughly 4 hours combined. The heavy lifting, or like people's, there will be changes to the way we test. So testing is a bit affected, and block creation, block building is a bit affected. But all of those changes are quite small compared to the gain that we can have with this in the amount of compute increase that we can do while keeping the state basically on a separate axis. Yes, that's it. Questions?
Well, so my initial impression is that it's hacky, and we should go for proper multidimensional gas. Like if we try to squeeze it into Glamsterdam, we'll repeat the same mistake as we did with Spectra. Like it's we were too greedy and we had to split the hard fork in two. So to me, like a proper version of this without all the hacks, like proper version of introducing a new dimension to the gas, it sounds like a good headliner for the next hard fork. But yeah, I'm just seeing like this is the same Spectra story repeating again. I like implemented it in 4 hours. I think it's optimistic and heroic, and there will be implications that are far-fetched.
I'm sorry, Andrew. Can you explain a bit more why you think this is hacky? Because this seems to be very compatible with like the full multidimensional metering, where you just meter every resource independently.
Then maybe we should then do it. We already have blob gas, right? So why don't we have why don't we do it properly and have state gas and so on, rather than like pretend that it's not introducing a new dimension, but like kind of is introducing and is not. It just sounds to me a bit strange and inconsistent.
I would say the only difference here is that blob gas has its own fee, and we are not yet doing the independent fees, right? Like the state creation gas is still charged on the main fee, but we are introducing an internal counter that is metering state creation costs independently. So I don't see how that's different.
But maybe we should introduce like an independent fee.
Right, but so that is a bigger change than just doing metering. So you need metering to do the pricing, right, to update the fees. So we would have to do metering anyway. But just doing metering is simpler and already give us big benefits. But if we wanted to do, for instance, multidimensional pricing in H star, we still could do it and use the stuff we are implementing now in multidimensional metering. So they are completely compatible. It's just we don't need to do them all in the same step. And just doing metering already give us huge gains in scalability.
Okay, maybe just okay. My initial impression is just we are trying, like, for tactical reasons, we are introducing unnecessary complexity to the protocol instead of a more kind of elegant and comprehensive solution. But again, it's my first impression. I might be wrong.
Yeah, one comment from my side is just that I think it's important to keep in mind. I in principle agree with some of these worries about Amsterdam scope. The problem is just that really the vast majority of Amsterdam EIPs that we have, including both headliners, are focused on enabling a higher gas limit, and I think we are on track to actually being able to achieve quite a bit of a gas limit increase. I'm very excited about that. But all of this is basically blocked if we do not have any adjustment to limiting state growth. I think my understanding is currently, as of like today, we're basically at a roughly 100 gigabyte state growth rate annualized, and that is without any increases. We might even be able to get a little bit of a further gas increase before Amsterdam. So basically, we would arrive at Amsterdam and then be blocked from actually making use of any of the changes we ship if we don't have anything to address the state growth concerns. So while I think the concerns are very valid, but I do think we need to discuss, like, if we do not want to go with this proposed change, what else are we doing about state growth to actually be able to use all of the other changes that are coming with Amsterdam?
So I was also kind of against this change when I started, and during implementation I kind of realized that this is really not such a big deal, and it seems to me to be like the optimal solution given the trade-offs that we have, and yeah.
Then you had your hand raised, or no? Okay. Right. I do think it's not ideal. Of course, this kind of the specific proposed shape is coming on the call where we ideally would already want to make the decision. At the same time, I would also be very sad if we leave today's call while still not having finalized at least the CFI decisions. How do clients overall feel about this? Do we feel ready? Do we feel that we have the information to make this decision now? What are people leaning towards? Maybe I can just call on individual clients. I mean, I'm not sure, Marius, how much you've coordinated with the rest of Geth. How much are you speaking for the Geth team versus just your own personal opinion? Do we have anyone else from the Geth team on the call that could comment as well?
Yeah, I can give a quick comment. So I do think that the direction laid out is like a good one. I vastly prefer this solution to actual multidimensional gas because I always felt that the true multidimensional gas accounting has a lot of challenges that we were never really able to resolve in theory. So this seems to be something that is actually possible. And so, yeah, I would say I could get behind this.
Do we have anyone from Nethermind on the call that has a view on this?
So from my side, I really like gas metering proposed by Maria.
And you're talking about the full gas metering that I think we decided to, for now, DFI for Amsterdam, or are you talking about this like smaller version that Marius just presented?
Smaller version.
I see. Okay. From the BESU side, I think we just had an attempt at a hand raised.
Yeah, I think we might need a little bit of time. I think we're a little torn between the difference between the multidimensional, a full-blown multidimensional approach and metering, only because, when things go in, they don't come out, right? So we need to think about that.
And does that specifically mean that you'd prefer to not make the decision today?
I think that means we are unprepared to contribute to the decision today.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think to make kind of the decision clearer, I would just propose what the possible alternative is, and it would be basically a bare bones EIP that increases the gas the state creation costs. Probably for contracts, the number I had was from 200 going to 300. For new storage slots from 20,000 to 80,000, and for creating new accounts from 25,000 to 100,000. And the idea is basically that this would go in, and this would be either sufficient or somewhat or a little bit uncomfortable for the next year. But then so I think if you want maximum simplicity for Amsterdam, as you crank that goal up to infinity, you basically approach having to do this. But the long-term picture of this is I think important to think about, right? Which is that keeping code mostly out of the increases, which is necessary to allow deployments within 16 million, is something that we'd eventually have to fix. And in general, it feels like the way that things are growing is that the ratio between how much we can scale execution and how much we can scale state size, it will in the long-term future possibly be a factor of 10 or even a factor of 30 different from what it was at the beginning. And so basically gas costs would have to change quite a bit. And so a gas cost increase ultimately would likely kick the can down the road. And so realistically, it would basically mean either multidimensional something eventually, or it would mean that we create a completely different facility for creating big contracts and basically deprecate and break the existing functionality eventually, right? So I think that's the basically the alternative path to doing something like this now.
Right. And just to basically make that so basically for people who are maybe not super deep into this topic, so yeah, the idea could be we basically completely remove the multidimensional metering aspect of it, and then we either have a fixed repricing or a repricing that is still relative to the gas limit, but no separate tracking of the state creation gas and all these things. The main kind of downside there is that if we still want to allow for maximum size contract deployments within a 16 million transaction, we basically have a very sharp limit on how much we can increase the price for contract deployments. And so it would mean that we end up in a world where contract deployments are basically, say, 4 times cheaper than all other ways of creating state, which means if someone wants to, they can basically just, or if safe, that would be a simpler option. Maria?
Yeah, I just would like to add this thing of doing a proper solution on H-star. I just want to clarify that actually it wouldn't be a very different proposal from what we have right now. I think what we have right now is the minimum change in the EVM that would allow us to meet our state growth independently from the other resources, which I think it's something we'll want to do at some point in the future. But this step, even if we do more stuff on top of it, this small step we'll have to do it anyways. So the question is do we have scope for doing it now, or do we push it forward? Knowing that doing it now, it actually brings a lot of benefits in terms of scalability and making sure that contract deployments don't get too cheap in relation to all the other state creation operations.
Sounds good. So the three options that I see for today that we could decide is the EIP as proposed by Marius, or a static repricing as proposed by Vitalik, with the understanding that basically, yeah, we're somewhat, have this risk of somewhat higher state growth for a while because of contracts, or a variant of what Vitalik proposed, but basically still with this relative pricing to the gas limit. So just taking out the metering. Again, would be nice to make a decision today. Yeah, after listening to these different proposed solutions, do we have more client team opinions, Ben?
Yeah, there's some more consideration time since it's just presented today, and so is the new alternative.
If we wanted to have more consideration time, the next ACDE would be in 2 weeks. Is there any way for us to make a decision on a faster timeline on this? How much, what is a reasonable amount of time for clients to look into this?
ACDT. I mean, I don't think it needs 2 weeks to think about. Like Monday's
Right.
ball.
Would clients would that be enough time? That's basically 2 days from now. I mean 2 working days. Does it work for clients? Then I do think, because I think I'd be much more comfortable delaying for Monday than delaying for 2 weeks. But yeah, then I think, I see quite a few thumbs up on ACDT in chat. So then let's postpone to that. Maybe we can have a summary document of the available options out to help guide that. Okay, good. Then let's move on. Quite a few more EIPs to discuss. And hopefully this is the only one that we're postponing. We had 3 last. Can we maybe share the document again? If we scroll down to EIP 7793, that's the conditional transactions one. That was the one where we left it off last call. We didn't go, there was 3 last EIPs that we didn't get to. So I would want to start with those before we revisit the other ones. So 7793 conditional transactions. The main reason why this is right now, basically everything is marked as DFI candidate by default, just because we kind of have a pretty big scope. There wasn't really much engagement by clients so far on calls when we were discussing it. However, we had 2 clients, specifically Nethermind and Besu, who ranked this as A, and so that's why I wanted to at least get back to this one more time. So if someone from either of those 2 clients or someone else with opinions on this EIP would want to make a case for adding 7793 to the POC scope, then now would be the time to speak up.
So the motivation for this EIP really is to provide better support for encrypted mempools, and provide a way for users to send their transactions with a very strong guarantee that they won't be front run. And kind of the way it's designed is to kind of support this kind of happening more at the application level. So sort of a minimal change to the protocol that will allow sort of the application layer to do most of the work. That's the sort of main motivation. So I think that I was discussing with Marius because he had some concerns about the sort of block building aspect of it, and whether it kind of complicated that. So I responded to that. And essentially, because it's only targeted towards these kind of, it's out of protocol and only specific validators have to opt into it, it would kind of contain potentially the block building changes to only certain kind of clients that want to provide support for it. But I'm not sure if I'm not sure if the Geth team were convinced by that, but yeah.
Marius?
Yeah, I'm not super convinced by that, because that basically means we have some transactions that only some people or some clients or some like sophisticated builders can build, and others will just not be able to include them. And like unsophisticated builders, or sorry, I upped my microphone.
Yeah, so to kind of address that, so what I'm kind of saying here is that mostly, okay, so you would have like this sort of, as I say, it would be out of protocol, and certain, proposers have opted into it, and they're running like a custom block building plugin, and then, that would kind of handle that. But for those who aren't opted in, you could kind of have some kind of very basic support. So it's not like you're kind of limited to not support these transactions at all, but you could just kind of have some very kind of basic heuristic where you're just going to kind of see what conditional transactions are in the mempool and attempt to place them at the top of block before you kind of sequence the rest of the block.
Fabi?
Yeah, so I'm following this discussion, and want to say that I understand that most of the stuff for the encrypted mempool is out of protocol, but apart from the new conditional transaction type and the transaction index opcode, I'm more concerned about the transaction index opcode as a way to have maybe a quick way to start implementing encrypted transaction mempool. And because I don't know if this opcode will be always be used also in future. Maybe it could be something that will be deprecated, and we know how difficult it is then to deprecate and remove maybe opcodes that are not more used. So what about, I don't know if you have thought about, instead of adding this opcode, what about changing the block import validation rule to make sure that a conditional transaction is included in the right place? So instead of adding the opcode, working on the block validation rules. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, so that's the way that the EIP does work. So basically, it's kind of two parts. So there's the conditional transaction, like the new transaction type, right? And then this is integrated into the block validation rules. So if you created a block and included this transaction in the wrong place, it would invalidate the block. And the opcode is actually more for a different purpose. So if you're actually one of the users who sent your transaction that's been included on chain, it's going to be part of, like, in most cases, part of a bundle. And so what you want is a way to actually check in your like smart account what the TX index is, because you don't necessarily trust whoever actually posted the transaction, like the bundler. You can't necessarily trust them. So you kind of need a way to also check on chain that it was included where it was expected to be.
Yeah, just to cut in here for time box reasons, Marius also mentioned it for now. I see Marius had the comment that he would prefer to basically have this not in Amsterdam, but maybe considered for HStar. And I see in the kind of emoji reaction supporting this, Dragan from Red side, and we have Marek from Nethermind. And also, yeah, so that to me implies that we might just be relatively far away from kind of broad client support for this in Amsterdam, in which case we should just, for now, just basically just move on with the DFI decision and reconsider this for HStar. Does this seem reasonable for people? Or yeah, if any of the clients that I mentioned basically feel like they're not correctly represented as opposing inclusion for Amsterdam, then ideally now would be good time to correct that. Otherwise, I think we have no basis for CFI, and then we have to DFI now. Okay, then I would say, I mean, it does seem like a very interesting proposal, and I do think it probably has good chances in H-star, but I think then the decision is clear and that we just don't have enough client support for this for Amsterdam. So then we would, yeah, then we'll DFI it now. Okay, then we move on to the second EIP out of that section, which is the or the second one out of the ones that were left, which is the pay code EIP 5920. There, basically the reason why this is marked again as DFI is just that by default anything here is DFI, but also that no single client had ranked this better than B. We had basically client rankings B, 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 C. So seemed pretty far from client consensus on including it. Has anything changed since then? Are any clients super excited about this now? Otherwise, I think it's a clear default DFI. Okay, then I think for this one we don't have to have too much discussion. Then the pay up code is also DFI'd for now for Amsterdam. And then the last one to talk about before we can loop back to the beginning is EIP 8051. That is the precompile for MLDSA signature verification. So this was part of a broader post-quantum kind of like bundle of changes. The other ones we have DFI'd. This one specifically we have not yet made a decision on, and there was from a while ago already on an ACDE agenda from December 15th. There was a comment by Renaud on this EIP and some of the related ones. I'm not sure if you are on the call today.
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Would you want to briefly summarize your comments on this?
Yeah, so we have been talking a lot about post-quantum transition, yet we have some proposals. So there are two separated Falcon proposals. There is dilithium. Dilithium actually seems to be the choice of Web2 because it's already included in some implementation in Chromium and so on. The difficulty to implement this one is lower than the others. There are several implementations that could be directly integrated into clients. So we think, yeah, and there is no backward compatibility issue with this one. So we think that while Falcon has some advantage, and mainly we began with implementing those in smart contracts, and the gas cost was far lower, but it's because it's not included in a node. If we compare MLDSA efficiency with Falcon. Okay, what's the comment here? Yep. Is that comment related to including a signature verification precompile? So basically, if we look at the cycle numbers of post-quantum verification, it's for Falcon, it's even smaller than an ECDSA verification. So the constraints with post-quantum signature are as bandwidth, meaning that size of signatures and public keys are far larger. So there are several efforts. Consensus team is working on aggregation of signatures. What they will use is most probably hash-based aggregation. I'm not sure that having a stateful candidates would be good for consensus layer. So here I don't know if we need only one precompile, or if we look at what we have for elliptic curves. For instance, we have R1, we have K1, we have BLS. BLS mainly is already available for consensus. So maybe in the future we could devise what is optimal for consensus and separate what is optimal from consensus and for execution layer. However, having the aggregation mechanism, I guess we could. Yeah, I mean, for the choice, yeah, I see what Marius is writing. I think that I'm not sure that Ethereum should be the one redoing all the process that the NIST has taken for more than 8 years now. So mainly, I don't know how many cryptographers we have in the Ethereum ecosystem, but basically the NIST and ISA are counting hundreds of cryptographers that has been working for 10 years. So I'm not sure that if we have to redo all the process on our side, even if some tweaking and tuning to Ethereum might be necessary. And another thing is that the consensus will be fast to move, because as soon as the concerned fork will be pushed, all nodes will switch at once. But moving users from accounts will take years. If we look at what happened with account abstraction, for instance, it has been available for 3 years now, and mainly no wallet implemented. So I think we need to begin the pedagogy and work on this, because once the solution is available,
Renaud, just to cut in, just because for time boxing, just because we only have 30 minutes left in the call, I think the argument is clear for now. I'd rather for now just go on a round of feedback from other people on this point, and then we can get back to you afterwards. Thank you. With a big group there, I'm not sure who of you all want to say something.
Yeah, I just want to push back against this. Like, I think it's if we had to choose something now, I think this would make a lot of sense. But I think, yeah, just given the unknowns of what the industry is going to adopt and put into hardware and that kind of thing, I think it's making a decision now is is a good chance to end up with something that's not quite as popular. Also, I think with all the repricings going on now and in HSTAR, I think like the trade-offs between compute and storage and cold data costs are changing quite dramatically, and that might have a big impact on what is viable or makes sense in terms of the standard. So I think it might be good to hold off on this, certainly for now.
Dano?
So as far as the notion that we're picking a PQ algorithm now, the reality is we are not going to be able to pick just one. Each one has their own quirks and their own compromises that different users are going to want different values for. But from that set of what is going to probably be in the set, MLDSA is almost certainly going to be one of them, because it has NIFT support. That's FIPS 204, and that's what chips are coming out with to support the signature already. It's already the leading replacement in the Web 2 world for the signatures for RSA and ECDSA signatures. But I think another thing that we need to think about is downstream users, particularly in the smart contract world. If we give them no smart contract precompile support for post-quantum signatures, they're not going to have time to adapt their ideas and their motions towards supporting post-quantum signatures in things like signed messages and smart and account abstraction. So waiting until we get everything perfect is really going to put all our downstream users at a disadvantage.
Ben?
If we're going to have to support multiple potentially, would it be better to have some kind of framework where we can say, all right, this is the process that will add post-quantum signatures, and maybe there's I don't know if there's a transaction type involved as well, so that we can add them without them just being sort of random precompiled, but in a more coordinated way.
Felix?
So regarding the transaction type, just as a quick comment, so having it as a precompile kind of factors in with the whole account abstraction effort, where you would be able to use this precompile inside of a smart account to verify the transaction origin. So just basically adding this precompile in now fits in kind of good with the account abstraction roadmap of being able to support post-quantum signatures later. So that's kind of how I see this. I think sooner or later we're going to have to add some post-quantum signature scheme into the protocol as a precompile. And so, yeah, we might as well add this one, but adding it as a precompile, I think, is the correct approach.
And to clarify, Felix, I think the guest team had put this at C, but that to me sounds like you're now more open to having this as part of Amsterdam, or how to interpret this.
So I am never really against adding specific crypto precompiles, I have to say, because the process of adding them basically is always the same. It requires extensive testing, it requires diversity in the implementation libraries, and it requires that the cryptographic standard itself, which is being added as a precompile, is reasonably agreed upon by the community of cryptographers. But I think in this case, I haven't evaluated if there are good libraries for this algorithm, but I think there are some. And so mostly it's going to come down to how it holds up in fuzz testing and so on, and what is the danger of splitting the network due to a bug in the underlying implementation of this precompile. So I cannot answer this exhaustively right now. I just know that in general, adding precompiles like this is always the same. So I'm not inherently against it. It's also one of the extension points in Ethereum that is kind of the most isolated in some ways, because it's just a function exposed to the EVM. So it's also very easy to decide late in the process that, yeah, we don't end up activating this because we found a bug or we feel not confident about it. Whereas if we make a huge change to, for example, the fee market, and then we decide later to not do this change, we have to undo a lot of complexity. Whereas with adding a precompile, we can always in the last minute pull it, because there's an issue in testing or we feel the confidence doesn't hold up or so.
And Antonio?
Right, just like adding a quick thing here. I've been working with Renault a lot in the last year on this, just like adding something that has not been covered here. I'm all for like having post-quantum into a precompile. There's a little problem to now. There's a bit of confusion what is standardized and what not. And one thing that happened in the last summer that is not a lot well known is that so DSA, so Dilithium has been standardized by NIST, and the signature is bigger than Falcon, and this is bad. But what happened last summer at Crypto 2025? The best paper award has actually a Dilithium with the smaller signature size. What's the problem here? That Dilithium has already been standardized, and so we are now in the situation where Falcon has a smaller key and not yet standardized, and it's complicated the signature is complicated. Dilithium has a bigger signatures, but standardized. But at Crypto 2025, actually there is a new paper that makes the Dilithium signature smaller, but it's already been standardized. So it's like paradox on paradox. Just adding this. Sorry.
So basically what I'm hearing is your feedback is it's a bit too early because we don't really, the space of signature algorithms hasn't solidified to the point where we can clearly say which one is the best one or which one should be added.
At the very least, I will wait yet another release. So at the very least, I will not put anything in Amsterdam and maybe have really scope this properly for H-star, where we have a bit of more months to understand the status quo. Because again, like this Dilithium paper on Crypto 2025 that they brought the signature almost at the same size than Falcon, for example, was totally unexpected, at least to me. But the problem now that this has been already standardized, so I will wait at least H-star to and focus. I actually agree with what was written in the chat. Maybe we should have aim one of our fork only on this, and because this is going to be a bit of effort. Maybe having more than one, but really having one fork on post-quantum transaction signature focus. I don't know how we want to call it.
Okay. Right. I think it would be really important if we could make a decision today. It felt a little 50-50. It seemed like everyone was open to it, but also a bit hesitant. I think now, Antonio, you're specifically recommending to wait at least one more fork. Is this do people in principle, I think, again, given the Gramsam fork scope, any 50-50, I think we would eventually resolve with a DFI because we already have a big fork scope. So that's maybe what's leaning. Do we we currently have any clients that would prefer this in Amsterdam over delaying the decision to H star. Basically, let's ask it this way. And any client representatives that would specifically want this in Amsterdam. Okay, I think if all the clients basically are kind of unsure about whether or not this should be in Amsterdam, and no one really has a strong preference for Amsterdam, and there are some concerns, then I think that the default decision here is DFI for Amsterdam. And maybe we can, like in the run up to the H-star decisions, consider having some ACDE breakout specifically about post-quantum signatures and EVM changes. We can look into this async, but yeah, I would say DFI is the like last opportunity for any objections to the DFI decision. Okay, then we for Amsterdam DFI the EIP. Okay, then let's see. We are already starting to be a bit short on time, but also not that many EIPs left. Now the only primary section we should still try to get through is decisions from or EIPs from last ACDE that we basically had to delay or postpone to today. The first one in that group, so we now scroll back up basically on the page, would be the T-Store one, so EIP 7971, hard limits for transient storage. That one basically in general had some, like overall there was some interest in shipping that. At the same time, there were unresolved account abstraction concerns, and specifically there was the ask to give 2 more weeks of time for people to potentially address those account abstraction concerns. Have those been addressed? Is there anyone with context on this that could speak up? Again, default otherwise, but if there was no status change, this would be a DFI. Has there been any progress on this? Okay, then I would say then this kind of is an auto DFI. Is there any objections to DFIing this? Okay, then 7971 is DFI'd for Amsterdam. The next one up would be EIP 8032, which is the size-based storage gas pricing. So the idea was to basically make it so state rights could basically be priced according to the total kind of size of the storage tree at the cost of a small kind of state tree transition. Do we have anyone with opinions on this EIP? Carlos?
Yeah, so very quickly, we basically benchmarked initially this by running worst case attacks to Zen. But now we have basically bloated a new contract, an ERC20 contract to 30 gigs to actually make sure that indeed is the size of the contract storage what actually causes these, let's say, more performance issues. On the other side, I'm also trying to investigate whether depth plays into it and basically which percentage each of them like takes from the overall execution time. So I would say, at least from my side and in my opinion, we don't have enough data to actually make this or put this into Amsterdam until we are not able to run some experiments on BloatNet.
My understanding is also that there's now renewed interest in working towards a general kind of state tree transition for Ethereum. Basically the successor to the Verkle saga. But obviously not for Amsterdam, but for later hard forks. So of course the temptation would be to then like potentially like not make earlier transitions of the state tree, which would be
Yeah,
But Guillaume, maybe you can speak to this.
counter this. So yeah, those two EIPs, like the binary trees transition and this thing, have nothing in common. However, if you are, if as a client developer you are worried that the binary transition is too complex, this is a much simpler version of it, and it gives you a great opportunity to test that transition.
Right. Do we have client team takes on this? And of course, just to clarify for people, right, like the upside, like the reason for why this would be nice to do is, of course, that otherwise we have to price all stores kind of according to the worst case performance of the heaviest contracts, which of course is not ideal. It will make everything a bit more expensive for users. And the reason for not doing it would be the complexity. So that's the trade-off here.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, and also because Carlos would like to talk about 7907, this EIP is created for to help actually Reth and another client. If Reth is happy to DFI it, well, you know, I'm not gonna try to help them against their will. So it helps with. It helps to demonstrate the transition, so we will implement it anyway. In fact, the implementation exists. But yeah, I'm not going to fight to help people that don't want to be helped. So I am withdrawing this EIP for Glamsterdam.
Not exactly sure what the help was, but thank you for helping.
Okay, is this like a final decision, Guillaume? Because I mean, we can check if
Yeah,
otherwise
yeah.
clients. Okay, then indeed we will DFI this. Well, yeah, withdraw it. I think. I mean, DFI is maybe the cleaner way, but either way, same outcome. And yeah, move on to the next EIP, EIP 7907. Meter contract code size and increase limit. So just for context there, yeah, before we go into the analysis that Carlos has done, there was initially several different proposals for how to potentially allow for larger maximum contract sizes in this fork. The currently only remaining PFI EIP is 7907, which would do it based on a change to the state basic account structure by adding a size value, but only to newly deployed contracts. But we also on last call discussed that theoretically we could instead replace this with the even simpler EIP by Julio from a while ago about that they would basically just do a constant bump to the maximum allowed contract size. And my understanding is that Carlos, you did an analysis, and I think it was actually primarily about this alternative proposal by the Julio EIP that would just be a constant bump of the maximum contract size, and how much of a bump there we could do and what the implications would be. Do you want to briefly share your screen and go through that analysis?
Yeah, sure. I sent the request to actually share the screen.
I think now you should be able to.
On my way. So this one is, yeah. Okay. Can you see? Can you see the browser?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So yeah, to go very quickly, basically what I did was I took Geth, I completely disabled all the caches, specifically the code one. And from there, what I did is I deployed 18,000 contracts. All of them have different bytecode because they use address in the init code. And besides that, they all have different ranges of sizes that go from 0.5 kilobytes to 64. And basically the TLDR is we are heating for 64 kilobytes on average 1 second of execution time, which includes, of course, reading. So that's certainly viable at 60 million gas, especially because Geth, as I said, has a completely disabled cache, which that is a scenario that will never ever happen. And on top of that, this is the worst possible case that we could execute. So that's a block full of transactions with minimal overhead to do as many Xcode size calls to call contracts as possible. And the data that I would like to highlight here is that basically code read scales sublinearly with bytecode size. So basically, as you can see, from the time it takes us to read 0.5 kilobytes to 64 kilobytes, we have an increase of 8.5x. But we have actually gone from 0.5 kilobytes to 64, which means we have a 128x increase in code size. And of course, if you basically check the overall thing, the more we scoot towards bigger contracts, the much more time it takes over just reading the code itself than actually doing any other thing whatsoever. So yeah, after all of these analysis, which you can check in ETH research, I think the easiest way to go will basically be just accept having the proposal from Julio. And for the question, what if we go to 100 million gas? Well, with the data we have, the projected times for 100 million gas with this attack will be 1 second execution time for 32 kilobyte contracts and 1.5 seconds for 64 kilobyte contracts. And that's again with the cache from Geth disabled. There's only 2 more things I want to mention here. The first one is notice that most of the contracts deployed nowadays are copies. So basically, when we actually deployed code, we very rarely see new additions into the database, and that basically comes to say that I think it's not an issue if we just remove bytecode deployment from EIP 8037, and therefore we allow to deploy these bigger contracts, let's say at least up to 64 kilobytes without hitting any transaction gas limit cap issues or anything like that, at least because it's the simplest solution and because we can at this point accept it. But yeah, that's more or less the conclusions. Anyways, you're free to interpret the data as you wish and come up with yours.
Thank you very much. So basically, I think there's 3 approaches here, or 3 decisions we could make. Decision 1, of course, would be to do nothing about contract code. Decision 2 would be to implement the simpler Julio EIP, so 7954. I put the links in the chat with a bump, and we could decide which bump, so 32 kilobytes or 64 kilobytes, for example. Or option 3 would be to go with the EIP that is actually PFI'd right now, which is 7907, which, just to remind people, right, like that specifically instead charges proportional to the size of the contract, so it doesn't have any performance considerations, but it comes at the cost of also a state change, nothing that needs to be applied retroactively with the transition, but basically any new accounts would now have an extra field, which is the code size. Do we have comments on which of those 3 options would be preferred? Ben?
So I prefer the simple bump, but to the lower level 32, and we can revisit because it also changed to the account storage, and then we can revisit what we want to do after that.
Maria?
I just wanted to to say something like about the analysis from Carlos. So an interesting thing here is that you can see that until the 10 kilobyte contract size, the performance is mostly linear, so it doesn't increase significantly with the code size. But then when we go from 10 to 24, 24 to 32, and 32 to 64, we actually see a pretty linear increase. What this means is that if we want to go, let's say, from 24 to 64, this means that we would have to price the operation at the worst case scenario, which would be the 64. And so essentially every time we are loading code, even if it's smaller contracts, so to see a performance which is much, much better, we would have to price it at the worst case scenario, so at the 64 kilobytes. So essentially we would make the throughput on these operations for a huge majority of users linearly worse, just because we have the possibility of increasing the contract size. So to me, this is a huge drawback for a fork that is all about scalability. So essentially we are repricing code accessing operations in a worst case and hurting the scalability on those operations. So I don't think this is something that I would be happy with. So I do have a huge preferences for spending the time and actually implementing 7907 so that we can keep the cost of these operations in line with their actually costs to execute.
Dragan?
Upping the size to more conservative 32 kilobytes. It seems like a nice way. It's, yeah, we should probably do it.
Guillaume?
Yeah, just a quick response to Maria's statement. For sure, it's true that if you have a single cost for any contract size, someone's going to be fleeced. Either your cost is going to be too low for what you get, or it's going to be too high for the builder. The thing is, as long as you don't have something like 2926, which tries to precisely pay exactly for what you pay for, you're going to have this imbalance. So even 7907 has this problem. Why is it given a price for something you know until 24 kilobytes it's the standard price, and then it gets bigger. It's kind of the same approach. I mean, either you decide you want to like the contract code size to the access cost for the contract size to the access cost to reflect the contract size, in which case that's 2926, or you say, well, this is not a problem big enough to do that at this moment, and then you just bump the code size to a safe limit, knowing that some people will pay more than they have to, either the transaction sender or the block builder. But yeah, in my view, this is already a choice we made. So that's there's no point in selecting or like scheduling an EIP that is going to create a temporary cost that we'll have to maintain for the rest of the time, with and that we want to replace eventually, either in iStar or a bit later.
But that's the thing, right? Like ideally, we would have the threshold at 10 kilobytes or close to it, because before that, costs are fairly linear. But the issue is that at 24, the difference is still not horrendous. But then the higher you go, the worse it gets in a linear fashion, right? And so that's where I'm concerned, is like increasing contract size too much will be hurting contract loading for all the other users at the same level. And contract loading is fairly a common thing we do. So I don't know. It seems like a huge hit in scalability. So yeah, I'll be a bit unhappy about that.
I mean, core development is about being unhappy. At least that's my experience.
From the group, again, there seems to be a comment.
I think another thing here is that like we can also, for smaller contracts, implement some kind of refund mechanism. In the future, it's very hard to make stuff more expensive, and like price some of these other things correctly. But like having it where we charge the 24K limit and then refund if it was less, I think is a sensible mechanism that wouldn't break anything, and would allow us to get the correct pricing.
Are you proposing that we would basically modify the Julio EIP already to have such a refund for smaller than, like, say, 32 kilobytes contracts, or would you say at a later fork this could be added?
I would say for a later fork. I don't think we should make the situation worse by implementing the naive bump, the Julio's EIP, because I think that's just gonna like it exacerbates the situation in some ways now. But I think another mechanism where we correctly price things is more reasonable. And then like if we further want to be able to scale, if we want to further price things correctly for the contracts less than 24 kilobytes, I think we can do that in the future.
So we are, yes.
Dependent on how we got here.
I just cutting you off because like we are like 1-2 minutes before the end of the call. Yeah, it feels a bit hard. It's not like, it seems like people are leaning towards a bump to 32 kilobytes. It seems like that's the option that I've heard the most so far. We have not talked much about the actual, like the kind of the EIP that was originally proposed, the 7907, at all. So it seems like people are mostly apparently not a fan of that style of approach. I don't know. Do you have any, maybe just to simplify the decision tree here? Like, first, is there any client that actually prefers the 7907 mechanism? So basically the extra field to new accounts that includes the size of the contract. I mean, I guess Carlos and Ben, you already had your hand up, but I assume that was not on this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with 7907, but if we look at the goal, the short-term goal is to improve developers' experience, and a small bump will give that to like 32. Whereas in a longer term vision, we want to be able to allow larger contracts, and for that, maybe we think a little bit longer and do an improved mechanism. So therefore, the 32K bump is, it's a stopgap to buy some time, make every developer happy. And they're used to doing 24 kilobyte contracts, so it'll be a while before they start hitting 32.
Okay,
so we can sort that out in the next fork or the fork.
Yeah, so then maybe I would just like, because I really want to make this decision today, it's just in terms of like what I hear the most seems to be the bump to 32. That's something that came up repeatedly, and yes, there's the protest, and I personally also am a little worried about this, that like it will make all contract loads 33% more expensive. At the same time, contract loads are not a very dominating part of the current transaction cost, so maybe it's not so bad. And it's a very highly requested feature. So do we generally have rough consensus around the bump to 32? So basically like DFIing 7907 and instead CFIing, it's not technically PFI, but I think we were all okay with swapping this one out. Basically CFIing Julio's EIP with the understanding that it would be a bump to 32 kilobytes specifically. Does this have rough consensus? Or yeah, it's basically any client representative. I see, for example, Marius in chat that might have some or weak opposition at least. Like so any clients that are opposed to this option. Because otherwise, I would propose that we at least CFI it, and then we still, of course, in the DevNet stage, we can still also we will have benchmarks and everything, and we can still decide whether we actually end up going ahead with it or not. But in the interest of today, getting through the scoping.
CFI, which one?
CFI, so this would be, let me confirm the number.
Julius PR.
Julius. This is correct, yes.
Okay, well.
7954, but yes, exactly, 7954. And then just to have this be coupled with the last decision, because we always waited for but yeah, like first, how do we feel about this? Is this so I'll just can we CFI this? Is there anyone who would veto now CFI making this CFI decision? Okay, then I would say we DFI 7907 and we instead CFI as a basically swap in replacement 7954. And my understanding is that looking at the EIP right now that it already in the current form proposes a bump from 24 to 32. So that is exactly the number that we also intended here. I would then propose that just for practical reasons, this EIP 7954 comes with also a adjustment to the maximum init code size from 848 to 64. We don't have time to get into this now. And there's also this alternative EIP that we basically delayed decision on. You can see it right under the one that's currently marked, 7903, remove init code size limit. I would propose that we basically just on Monday on ACDT also very briefly revisit this. This should be a very quick decision because it's just about the init code and just basically see whether the Julio EIP on this point on the init code is reasonable, and then whether we still see a need for this additional EIP. I think that's the most reasonable. So if everyone is okay with that, then I would basically also delegate that small decision to ACDT. Or Marius, maybe you're saying you'd already just now make the DFI decision on the full uncapping?
Yes, I think we should DFI the full uncapping. We should just do, if we want to go the Julio route, we should go the Julio route, double the init code. That's it, and we're done with like this, working around the decisions.
Okay. I mean, I think that's kind of where this would be headed anyway. So then, yeah, maybe that's more reasonable. Okay. I was a bit hesitant because we're already 5 minutes over time. It's a bit late for decision, but yes, then I would propose we DFI 7907. Sorry, not 7903. Remove init code size limit, and we instead just go with the init code size adjustment from that is part of the Julio EIP. And yes, we can still see, of course, if we want to adjust that number that's in there. Anyone that's opposed to that? Okay, then we really only have the one delayed decision until Monday, which one was that? That was the state growth. So we basically we're delaying this. Yes, exactly. We had delaying the 8037 state growth decision for Monday, and other than that, the only EIPs that we'll have to talk about for lump sum scope will be the ones without protocol changes. So for all intents and purposes, otherwise the lump sum scope is by this point final, at least to the CFI stage. Awesome. This was a long path to get here, so I'm very, very happy we got it done, and thank you all very, very much, and see most of you all on ACDT next week.
you.